This guy is one of the worst politicians in this country, and obviously he is from the ANC, is he not? I'm not sure if he's getting too old or if he simply isn't as smart as he thinks he is. I mean, listen to this.
That must take its decision. We'll never have our legislation drafted in the US. Legislation will be drafted here, we'll take decisions here because we know the conditions here. For example, when Trump talked of genocide of Afrikaners, what he doesn't understand, he needs to be educated on it, is that whites South Africans constitute 8% of the population. Africans who are oppressed constitute about 80% of the population. Therefore, it is not imaginable that an 80% can be suppressing 8%. It's something that I don't understand. How does he imagine it?
When I heard those words, I couldn't believe my ears. I replayed it and replayed it just to understand what it is that he was trying to say here. 8% can never be oppressed by 80%. What? In case it's not clear, let's make this very, very clear. Unlike what our Minister of Mineral and Petroleum Resources, Greta Mantashe, said, it makes a lot of sense that 8% can be oppressed by 80%. I can't believe that this is coming out of the mouth of a politician. But then when I remember the kinds of politicians we have in our country, I'm like, of course it is coming out of the mouth of a politician. I mean, 80% is higher or bigger than 8%, hence it is obvious that the 80% can oppress the 8%. As a matter of fact, a portion of the 80% is currently oppressing a portion of the 8%. What do I mean? Well, I mean that the ANC government has set up many rules and laws that favor the 80% over the 8%. I know that many people view things like the BEE policies as necessary laws that will result in justice for the past and transformation for the future, but contrary to what they were promised to do, things like BEE are stifling efficiency in our economy. They are hindering many people's progress, including Black people's progress. And yep, they are also a sign of oppression. The colonial era, the apartheid era, and the era of the empires, including empires of the people like the Zulus, the Tutsis, the British, or whoever you can think of, were eras of violence. Those were times when empires ruled by the power of the sword or the power of the gun. That is why you see that South Africa was ruled by the smaller percentage of the people residing in South Africa, that is, the white people. In Rwanda, it was the Tutsis who ruled the bigger population of the Hutus. The more dangerous you are in violence, the more you are likely to conquer bigger populations. Logic, right? White people were the minority in South Africa, and yet they had so much power that they could easily rule the majority of the population, which was the blacks, the Indians, and the colours. They were the minority in population, but superior militarily. This is the same logic that was applied in many parts of the world for many, many decades. Several nations had 80% of the population ruled by the 20%. I mean, the apartheid era was exactly that, a rule of the minority simply because they were more capable when it comes to violence. The ANC stood no chance. Never ever fall for the lie that the ANC fought and won the country. Remember that the apartheid government even had nuclear weapons. Now, what could the ANC have done to stop them from simply dropping those things on black populations? That is how 20% manages to rule the 80%. But thank God, many white people became sentimental. They said, you know what? Let's all have the right to vote. They basically handed over all the power to the ANC and said, it is fine. Let us play the numbers game. They exposed their necks and said, let's do democracy. Ultimately, they handed over power to the 80%, hoping that the country could really be united. Since the end of the presidencies of Mandela and Mbeki, politics became the game of race instead of ideas. White people evolved their politics from being politics of violence and weapons and race to becoming politics of votes. Politics of numbers. In the South African context, this was as good as exposing your neck and hoping that the 80% would see this as a gesture of friendship. Remember that there are many white people who fought for the freedom of the 80%, for democracy in South Africa. It was not just black people and certainly not just the ANC. And maybe remembering these little facts will help make the healing, the forgiving, and the loving easier for all of us as South Africans. So apartheid and colonialism in South Africa were a domination based on how much violence whites could bring to the table should the subjects refuse to bow down. The ANC uses a modern version of oppression. They use a game of numbers. Since there are more black people, the ANC uses race to mobilize black people to vote for it and its babies. In this case, it is no longer violence first. It is no longer guns and swords. It is now the ballot. The majority are the ones that rule. Contrary to the past, where many people and many nations ruled by the power of violence, the gun, and the sword, today people rule by the power of the vote. Well, except for where we have people who use the gun to disturb the vote. But generally, we rule by the power of the vote today. So if we want to end the oppression of any race of people by any political party or government, it is paramount that we inform those who really hold the power, and that is the voters. Because as we say here, ignorant citizens vote for rubbish politicians. Contrary to what Minister Mantashe said, 80% can certainly dominate and even oppress the minority. They are doing it right now through the ballot. The people who voted in our last elections made it very clear. We vote black no matter what, and those black parties pursue policies that are meant to diminish the social and economic standing of all white people. But if we devote time and resources into changing the hearts and minds of those voters, this oppression can end. If there is no informing and no educating, in general terms, 80% of the population can simply vote against white no matter what. Due to the propaganda that was shared by the comrades for over 30 years and our inaction in countering it, the 80% could simply support race-based policies. They simply use a number, which is the 80%, to push for the laws that bring suffering to the minority. They don't have to use violence. They simply have to make life so difficult through the laws. They can even claim to be for equality, allowing white people to vote and start their own political parties, but the power of making babies is not utilized to the fullest among the white people, hence the 80% will remain the voting majority. In fact, the 80% grows to be that big because of the monthly rewards that they are guaranteed to win if they manage to contribute to the growth of the 80% even when they are not ready. We cannot simply just rush to America and cry about the oppression of the ANC. As we have already discussed this in previous videos, this poses a huge risk to the lives and livelihoods of all South Africans. A better way of fighting this oppression is by targeting the voter, specifically the mind of the voters, and together we can do it. While the apartheid government oppressed black people using force, the ANC government oppresses white people using fear in black people. What do I mean? They have created an idea in the minds of certain black South Africans, or rather the majority of black South Africans, that if they vote for anyone apart from the ANC and their babies, 1, it is a return to apartheid, and 2, it is an end to the social grants that the ANC has gotten many black people so used to. And just like that, the ANC manages to get most of the votes and oppresses using the power of the vote. What is our responsibility? I mean, we South Africans who have the privilege of knowing just a little more. We are supposed to attack the weapon used by the ANC and show the 80% that actually the 8% does not want to return to apartheid. Additionally, employment and business opportunities are way better than any social grant. During apartheid, black people could not live where white people lived. That was oppression. Right now, white people cannot apply for certain opportunities because of the laws like BEE. That is the oppression of white people. And to be honest, BEE is also a law that oppresses black people too. What do I mean? A lot of times, black people who really stand to benefit from the BEE opportunities are those already connected to the comrades, the Edwin Sordis and the Sean Mkhize's of South Africa. Alternatively, it is those with the capital to do the bribing. There are positions that come out from government companies declaring that this job is for people of a certain race only, usually excluding white people. That is oppression of the white people. White people are clearly being oppressed, although it is not at the same level as how black people were being oppressed during apartheid. Contrary to what the comrades would like you to think, many white people, just like many black, Indian, and colored people, suffer in poverty. Yes, they are not going through a genocide like some of them would like us to believe, but they are being oppressed and persecuted. White people are oppressed by the government of South Africa through certain laws. The good thing is, not all black people are in support of this oppression, but the number of the people against this is also too small to make a significant difference. Most people vote based on either race, struggle credential, or even communism. Who gets voted for? The most racist parties in the country. They are racist toward the 8% of the population, hence they make laws to lower the standing of the 8% in society. If there were no private companies in this country, white people would have become destitute. Instead of being nation builders, the ANC government became a revenge-driven organization that focused on seeking the pain of the white people instead of seeking the growth of all the people of South Africa. They focus on taking from white people instead of simply pursuing the empowerment and the upliftment of the previously disadvantaged individuals. The politics of this country became about blackness versus whiteness, and when the politics became that, then the parties with the most blacks win the elections and pass laws to benefit the blacks, but guess what? Because they are too lazy, corrupt, and incompetent, so the black people suffer as well. It seems as though our minister, Gwede Mantashe, can't comprehend the idea that bigger numbers can actually oppress the smaller numbers. In common sense, without other considerations to tip the scales, the side with the most people always wins. What is almost impossible is the 8% conquering and oppressing the 80%. Tutsis subjugating the Hutus, that is what is supposed to be impossible. What white people managed to do in South Africa, that is supposed to be impossible. It's only possible when you are advanced in tactics, knowledge, violence, skills, or other resources. That's it. Under normal circumstances, the majority wins. Democracy is a basis upon which the majority have the ability to oppress the minority. All people have to do in order to take what they didn't work for is vote. If they wake up and vote for the EFF, they can simply wake up and take all the banks, making them state-owned. They can nationalize everything, no questions asked. Oppression by the 80% of the population upon the 8% is easier when there are elections. It is the law. Majority of us agreed, so what is your problem? Majority rules. Right? You know what's good? All this can change. We need to stop voting based on race. We need to start voting based on ideas. Voting based on what works is what we were supposed to be doing. But we can start that right now. 2026 is around the corner. You can support us by buying our t-shirt, joining our channel membership, or making a deposit to our bank accounts. The details are all in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Katlego. This is Citizen Concerned. And until next time, beware of the comrades.